So another team moves on. TCU beat Oklahoma. They move on to the next round. Tonight, Kansas in the nightcap against Cincinnati, followed by the game coming up, or prior the game coming up at 6 o'clock, Kansas State. Jerome Tang, former Baylor coach, and Texas, with they're in. Kansas State trying to be a part of the NCAA tournament. Darby Brown, KWTX, always did a great job with us during the pregame shows for football and much more. She will travel throughout the country the next few weeks, and she joins us from Kansas City with Craig and Paul, and I'm David Smoke. Darby, thanks for your time. I think you had a chance to visit with Scott Drew. They're practicing, I believe, right now. His thoughts on the team and where they are as they have another day to get ready for what they have tomorrow, Kansas City, either Cincinnati or KU.
Yeah, he's feeling really good about this group. You know, he kind of mentioned we're heading into the third season. And so he's feeling like this group is where he wants them to be this time of year. You know, with only one returning starter, they had a lot to work through throughout this season with their younger players and the transfers. But he feels like they're all where they should be. They're feeling pretty healthy. I wasn't actually able to watch practice, but I watched video, and it looked like, you know, Langston was practicing. And so everybody was moving around and getting ready for tomorrow.
Darby, they have probably the most to gain of anybody in the tournament, and that can come with pressure, but I think getting Langston back maybe relieves a little bit of that, because they've been fighting through without he's not their best player, but he's their maybe most reliable that they haven't had for a few weeks.
Yeah, I think he's huge for this team. We saw kind of a little bit of a dip when they first went without him. They were able to work through some of those struggles, but he's definitely a guy you want to have back this time of year because of his experience. And quite frankly, he just was shooting really, really well prior to his injury issues this year. So that alone is something you want back. So hopefully he can really be ready to go. He looks pretty good in that Texas Tech game. He's probably a bright spot in that game. So that would definitely be a positive if they can keep him rolling throughout, the next, well, hopefully you said few weeks, hopefully a few weeks. I guess we'll see.
Darby, you're there at the T-Mobile Center, as we can see in the background. I just saw somebody with sombrero walk by in the background randomly.
Nice.
But
Oklahoma fan.
Oklahoma fan, okay. We heard the news from Brett Yormark last night about they're going to have the tournament in Kansas City for the next several years and just finalizing all of that. As somebody who's been up there on more than a couple occasions now at this point, your thoughts on just Kansas City as the host site and the Big 12 tournament being there for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I mean, I think they do a great job here. You can't argue with that. It's a great facility that they have, the setup with Power and Light District right next to it, plenty of things to do, plenty of hotels close by. It's really seamless here. So I totally understand why they're keeping it here. We were able to ask Scott Drew his opinion on the extension of the deal here. And he said, I get it. It's a good experience for all the fans, but he's like, let's face it, it's a home crowd for a few teams. We all know that. That is definitely true. And you can feel that with the fans that show up here. But he said, if it was my choice, I would pick to have it in Dallas. But it wasn't his choice. It's not Baylor's choice. And so, it's here to stay. And I think if you come up here and you are able to experience this, it is a really great event. So they do a great job, whether or not you might have a different opinion on where it should be or where you'd rather it be. It is a good environment up here.
Darby, we had Coach Drew on yesterday, and I asked about whether he could ever see him coaching anywhere else but Baylor. And today or yesterday evening, Louisville's job came open. You've heard the scuttle, the speculation, even some that say he's their leading candidate. We can't even imagine that would ever happen or be the case. Has anything been brought up to him about that at all in Kansas City?
We haven't brought it up. There was only a few of us at the media availability today, and quite frankly, I didn't feel like wasting our time or wasting his time because what's he going to say? But, I think everyone can agree if you're going to go after someone, why not give it a shot with Scott Drew? What his reaction would be to that, I think we're all on the same page as far as, I do not see a world where that happens. He just got the new building, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But, I've heard, I'll just say when the Arizona job came up, I heard his name was in the mix for that job. And so, his name's going to come up with jobs, period. That's going to happen. But, I think they can throw just about everything at him. And I personally don't see a world where that happens, but you never know, I guess.
Darby, any surprises through the first couple games for you in the tournament? West Virginia really pushed yesterday and blew it against Cincinnati, but everything else has kind of gone according to plan, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has. And, I think maybe tomorrow or even, tonight with Kansas injury issues, like it might get a little bit more interesting. The door's a little bit more wide open for different teams now at this point. But yeah, it's been a little bit routine, I think, and as you'd expect so far. And I just think it's really going to pick up later tonight and heading into tomorrow. I'm excited to see the games that are going to go on here.
Darby, last thing for me, and again, thank you for your time and great stuff as always. You traveling around in Kansas City right now and eventually elsewhere. Baylor at times can look like they are not unbeatable, but they just look so good. And then there's those 4 to 5 minute pockets. Houston in the first half, Texas Tech in the first half. And do you still have any kind of idea who they are, or is this just who they are? They're not going to change this too deep into the season.
Well, you mentioned the first half. The first half, they struggle. Starting strong, they struggle in the first half. I think that is unfortunately can be part of their identity at this point. Now we've seen that they are able to come from behind and they're able to, get back in the fight, at least like within that Houston game. But I think that could be part of their identity. We talked about that today. How are you fixing that? What are you doing for that? And, there's only so much that Scott can do. I think there's a little concern with this double bye. Are they going to come out flat here? Kind of how they have been. And I think it's a strong possibility, but, they have realized what happens when you do that. It's you get into overtime with Houston, but you're not able to finish. So I just think, unfortunately, I do think that's part of their identity. Now they've proven they can overcome it, but you'd hope that they can learn to, kind of shake some of that off early.
Thank you, Darby. Great stuff. Thank you. Darby Brown, KWTX in Kansas City, Big 12 men's basketball tournament as it moves into that second day. Last night, Texas beating Iowa State to win the women's title, and there are still 2 games left to be played tonight in KC with Kansas-Cincinnati, the nightcap. Prior to that, again, the game coming